This is the Office Manager Diaries, a podcast all about the highs and the lows of professionals in office management around the world. We'll delve into their career journeys and diaries where they'll share their stories, tips for success, and only things office managers understand. Enjoy, and please remember to give us a follow. Hello everybody, welcome to the Office Manager Diaries. It's Hannah Gray here, your host, and I am really delighted to be in person for the first time recording this podcast with two guests, Jacki Corbett, who is the Regional Estates Manager, and Simon Taylor, Director of Property and Workplace at Shoosmiths. Hello, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant to have you both here. So, Jacki, you have been on the podcast before, and we met up earlier this year, so in 2024, and said it would be great to have you back on, and you roped Simon in. So it'd be lovely to hear more about you, Simon, given it's your first time on the podcast with us. We know a little bit about Jacki already, but it would be great to hear more about you, as I say, to start with. So please do share what your role is here at Shoosmiths and how long you've been here for.
Basically, property director and workplace, manage across the whole estate, so 13 offices, covering everything in terms of soft FM, contract management, project work, relocations, so the whole spectrum in terms of sort of property management. Also look after acquisition of property, disposal, delapse, so again, all the sort of property estate side of it. So it covers that whole end-to-end process.
Yeah, amazing. And you've got a number of people that I'm assuming you manage. So you've got a manager-peer relationship or direct report relationship going on here. And Jacki, for those who perhaps haven't heard your episode as yet from season 1 with us, please can you introduce yourself and share what you do at Shoosmiths as well?
I'm the Regional Estates Manager, so I look after the Midlands. So we've got the Birmingham office where we are today. We've also got Nottingham, and I do anything and everything. So I've got a team here of front of house and graphics. So I look after that team, do all the health and safety things. Nottingham team is smaller, but they're just as important. And so, yeah, we're just looking after the office, making sure that everybody here, the lawyers, the PAs and external clients, but just making sure that we give them 5-star experience, make sure that they put Shoosmiths on the map, really. Keeping everybody happy.
Which isn't as easy as you make it sound just by saying that there. So how did you both get into the world of property management, and what were your backgrounds to begin with? How did you follow through in the career to where you are now?
My background is actually in interior design. So I did a 3-year design degree, and you more or less go through a process of doing design work, sort of progress through then to project managing. Most of the work that I did was sort of office related. From project management, sort of then moved into working on client side and moving towards sort of property management. So I've ended up working both client side and also service sort of provider side, so sort of contract side. So now on both sides.
Yeah. So was that in the space of like commercial fit outs and designing office spaces?
Yes.
In the sense that you now manage with contracts externally?
Yeah. So, I sort of very much see myself as the intelligent client, sort of understand it in terms of what people are doing. So if the contract says, well, that bit of drain pipe needs to be gold plated, then I can go, no, I don't think it does. Yeah. It's having that knowledge, but also having had that historical sort of design process and background, has helped to ensure that ultimately the offices that we've been able to provide for Shoosmiths is actually the best quality of actually design, and actually to be able to challenge the designers and challenge that process.
It's making a lot more sense now, having been here at your Birmingham office before today, as to why they are the way that they are. Jacki, what about for you, your background in getting into property management, facilities, office management? How did you get where you are now?
I first started off in reception. So in my 20s, I'd actually been a nanny, which is the same thing as looking after everybody, keeping them safe, organising parties and tidying up. So it's that caring attitude. So I took that, offices here. I started off on reception, then quickly worked my way up to office manager. There's about 100 people in that office where I was there, and it just progressed from there, really. Learning as I go along on the jobs, doing courses and things like that. Office moves as well was obviously included in that, closing some as well. The company that I was with previously they merged with other companies. So my role then became part of our new team members came over to our office, closing their office and just managing that from a personal point of view as well, just making sure that they were okay along with HR and things like that. And, as well as making sure that the office was completely empty before giving it back.
Yeah.
And then moved to here. And the rest is history here, as you see. It was a huge project, my biggest one to date, really, and the most fun.
So how long have you both been at Shoosmiths for? Was it 9 years, did you say?
Yeah, literally just coming into 9 years next month.
And Jackie, how about for you?
I'll be here 8 years in May.
So you've known each other for some time then?
Yeah.
So I'm doing an office closure at the moment for a client, and I'm finding it, because I haven't done a closure for a long time, I actually find it harder than doing a move. How do you feel about office closures when you just have to completely shut everything down? I feel like it's a very different process and much harder, I guess, because sometimes there's redundancies going on and there's that horrible feeling around the people and the culture at the time, trying to get people to clear their stuff when they just don't want to come back into the office or whatever else it might be. But how do you find, like you say, the disposals or the closures? How have you found that in your careers?
Very much it's actually understanding that people are going through change, and people naturally don't like change. They like to hang on to what they understand. And again, sort of particularly, we've gone through a huge change, a huge cultural change. But I think a lot of it is just being able to communicate with people, but actually recognise that there is that human element. It's not just a process of ticking off, we need to cancel these contracts, we need to arrange for people to physically move things. We don't need to just drive people to empty their cupboards and get rid of those 500 pairs of shoes that they've had under the desk for about 20 years. It's actually treating them as people and recognising that they're going through that emotional change, because it is very easy just to be able to just go through that checklist.
Almost kind of on autopilot for us who've done it time and time again.
Yeah, there's a process that you're following, the things that you actually need to do, but it's change for people, and it's sort of taking them on that journey and actually ensuring that they understand why they're going through the change, the benefits, how that change is going to help them.
This episode of the Office Manager Diaries is sponsored by Fooditude, an office caterer with a twist. These folks cook fresh food from scratch in their central production kitchen in London. Varied menus and hot meals can be delivered directly to your canteen by their fleet of vans. Fooditude is a one-stop shop taking care of meals, pantry services, coffee concepts and much more. All of this, and you don't even need a kitchen on site, meaning that you can save space and reduce on your labour costs. Their clients keep returning for more because their food is delicious, trust me, I have tried some, and helps build a company culture like nothing else. Employees are now working more flexibly than ever, so Fooditude has designed its service to be just that, flexible. And you can quickly flex up or down the service based on the amount of people at your site. Fooditude offers delicious and constantly changing menus made with sustainability in mind. See how you can bring your team together around the lunch table by visiting www.fooditude.co.uk and quote the OMD when reaching out. Thank you for sponsoring this episode.
How do you find an office closure compared to a move?
From a practical point of view, it's making sure that all the facilities and everything, the utilities, all of the tons of paper, I think we had about 5 tons of paper from one office closure that we had, and things like that. You need to make sure that it's not just going to be put in a skip, any paperwork. It has to be disposed of correctly for confidentiality reasons. It's also just making sure that people do take their personal items and making sure that it's their responsibility. Before we moved to 103, I think for the year before we were moving, I said, come and take your mugs. We put them in a specific place. If it's sentimental to you, please take it, because they won't be moving over to the other office. And people did do that, but it's having a checklist as well, so that when you have got things that need to be done or like from a timescale point of view, like things like TV license, all of those things, keep a checklist so that you've got something to work on, and you've got the dates written of when things were switched off. Do your meter readings when you leave, when you're walking out the building, handing over the keys just things like that. Just having that checklist.
Bit of a godsend, isn't it? Simon, there's a fairly large team, I'm assuming, that you have to manage, given the 13 properties and the portfolio that you have, with probably multiple office-related projects ongoing, I expect sometimes at the same time, simultaneously. How do you manage that and ensure that the teams reporting to you are motivated and are collaborating to deliver the best that they can, both in their day-to-day jobs, but also when projects occur?
Part of it is around having the right structure. So the structure that we have within Shoosmiths is to have that regional structure. So you have that more personal, direct contacts, so rather than it being just done centrally. So that, like Jacki manages, and it is that face-to-face contact, and just being able to actually sort of motivate people to understand that they do contribute, that there is value, that they are contributing hugely to, in effect, how Shoosmiths works. It's the lawyers that are the important elements, that ultimately they can't deliver what they're doing if we're not there to support them and actually make that happen. But again, a lot of it is down to that sort of communication and sort of direct contact. So it is that personal. I mean, you'll probably hear me repeat this again and again within the podcast, but it is about recognising for me, actually, that property isn't about property. It is actually about people. And it's that personal interaction to make sure that you do have that communication, that you do make sure that if I'm here, I will always go and see the team, make sure that they're okay, so that they recognise me and that they know that I am interested in what they're doing.
Yeah. And the delivery is there itself, isn't it? Because you
absolutely
motivate through that communication. With all of that, what does a typical day look like for you, Simon? If I were to say, right, you've come to Birmingham today, okay, probably this recording isn't a typical day for you. It doesn't sound like you do podcasts every day, but what does that look like, or a typical week or a typical month? And how do you structure all the different stakeholders that you have in terms of your direct reports and those direct reports of them and the subordinates?
So part of it is just having sort of regular meetings. So there is I have a weekly meeting with, in effect, my immediate management team. Within that, then we review the activity that is going on within their regions. So there is a clear understanding across that management team, across, in effect, all of the offices, that we understand just what's going on, whether that's specific by office or whether it's a total national sort of project or whatever that we're actually doing. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of emails coming in, whether that's dealing actually with our clients, our customers, in terms of their inquiries through, whether it's working through. So for me, for example, I've got a monthly board meeting I need to go to. There's an ops committee meeting that I go to on a monthly basis. So you've got a series of fixed events within that diary, invariably depending on the projects that are ongoing or the activity that are going on, that you're preparing board papers to go into the board. So then you are working with other functions, whether it's risk and ethics, whether it's procurement, whether it's IS, whether it's the project and innovation team. You are working cross-functionally across all the business support functions, in effect, to pull whatever data or information that you actually need to be. So you're never just working in a silo. And I think that was a business support function, that's really important, that you don't work in a silo, that you do have that cross-functional contact. It's obviously the financial element that you are managing. For me, the regionals tend to manage the FM provider. So in terms of that contract, so whether it's fixing the flicking light or the dripping tap or the air conditioning system that isn't working or the toilet that's not flushing, or could be. So last night I took a call quite late because there was an issue with our Solent office. So it is, you are on demand basically 24 hours a day because of constant issues. People that are managing a large portfolio, there is always, law of averages are there's going to be an issue somewhere that you actually need to be dealing with, because we're here to keep business going, basically.
So a couple of points there. IS, just for those who aren't familiar.
So like IT, so that's the...
Yeah. And you've both referenced it because you said about providing a 5-star service to your clients.
Yeah.
I always talk about it in the same vein, and you've mentioned it a few times already so far, Simon, that for you, the lawyers, your staff, the employees are your clients, and that's who you are delivering service to and for, to keep that environment running so that they can get on, essentially do the job that they need to do.
Yeah. And it's both, because obviously we are receiving their clients, so it is providing that exceptional service to them and making sure that they are welcome and looked after, and that experience that they have. I mean, I always quote that the previous office that we were in had these fantastic boutique toilets. And when I first came on board, sort of 8-9 years ago, it was landmark. That was the fantastic office facility, and everyone goes away talking about all these wonderful toilets. I'm like, my comment was, clients should be leaving talking about the fabulous service that we provide, not how special the toilets were. It's really getting that narrative right. That, this is an absolutely fantastic facility that we're sitting in now. And I'm sure that people will leave and will be talking about this as a fantastic facility. So, I'm perfectly happy with that. But when it's in the context of the toilets are fantastic, that's really not what we want our clients going home and talking about. In terms of that client, it's looking after their external client and also our internal client.
Yeah, and contractors that come to visit and everything, because that's what it's about. As you say, there isn't just that one element to this role, there's multiple elements. Jacki, for you, in terms of a day-to-day, what does that look like, especially with your 2 offices? Do you get to visit, and how many staff are in Birmingham versus Nottingham, or square footage? We have this thing, I think, in the office management world, I hear, where people meet each other at our events, and that one of the first questions they ask is, how big's your office? A very competitive question, I think, to ask. My office is bigger than yours, but how big is your office, Jacki?
Where we are currently, we've got 3 floors. So we've got 11, 12 and 20. And between all 3, we've got just under 30. Well, we've got just over 30, actually, isn't it? Just over 30,000 square feet. And our Nottingham office is just over 8. So, and I've got 3 staff in Nottingham, and I've got about 10 here looking to grow in Birmingham. As I'm getting more busy and things with events. So in regards to my typical day, I'll normally come to the 20th floor and just make sure everything's okay, make sure they've got everything that they need for the day, because this is where our clients come on to level 20. Make sure they're okay, make sure that hospitality team are okay, that they don't need anything. And then I'll go down to one of the lower floors, which is where we have our staff. That's where all our staff sit to do like their main body of work. I'll go and grab a desk there, check emails, check in with my colleague, Jacki. We try and sit together if we can. We'll see what we've got on, but also check my messages, check my emails, and see what meetings we've got in. As Simon mentioned, we always have a meeting every Tuesday, don't we? Which is myself, Simon, Tracy, who's our national estates manager, and the other 2 regional managers. So they're north and south. And it is really good to speak to them, and because we learn a lot from each other, I think, by sharing ideas or sharing knowledge about particular things that might come up. There might be people coming up to us saying something isn't working, might be the coffee machine or their laptop or something or other. So I'll either help them or point them in the direction of the person that can.
How do you manage it? Because you'd mentioned something about a national project a little while ago when you were explaining some of your role to me, Simon. What projects are they, or what projects can you tell us about that are national? So I'm assuming for consistency, there might be something you roll out that goes on in every single office. And what sort of things may they be, and how do the ideas come about for those?
So I suppose it's a mix of things in it, and it's interesting that we're shifting and getting a rebalance of how we're actually investing. So rather than it very much being bricks and mortar, having said this is a fabulous facility, we actually manage the amount of space sort of from 40,000 square feet down to 30, so that we are as efficient as possible. But a lot of what we're now investing in is being able to communicate with each other and sort of managing data, so that some of the projects we're rolling out sort of on a national basis is in effect doing video conferencing, but having that facility within every meeting room, rather than having one room where you could go and do a video call. That we're rolling out Teams capacity within every piece of cellular space. Because what we're recognizing is that when people come into the office, they're either communicating through Teams, or they're trying to communicate with colleagues or clients that are in a different office, could be in a different country around the world. And actually, it's those type of projects. Another one is that we rolled out agile working, sort of going back sort of 5 or 6 years ago, which very much moved us towards a task-based, driven sort of office working environment. We're now doing what we call wireless. So it is literally tethering people, because we went through this process of, yes, you can go, depending on what task you're doing, you go and work in the space, the facility that supports that task. But very much it was still very wired in terms of the solution. Those sort of lifting up your laptop to go and do a private core in a piece of cellular space is that you've then got to unplug everything. So what we're doing at the moment is totally untethering, really making people free to move around the space, and the technology then goes with them. So those are the sort of things that we're doing.
I think I saw some of that in your telephone pods, right? So I've seen that coming to fruition into life. So that's great. How has hybrid working affected your roles, either collectively in terms of everyone that you manage in, from the estate perspective, or individually, because there's so much of a differentiator between how it's impacted? How do you think post-pandemic hybrid world has impacted that? Have you reduced your property footprint overall? Have you stayed the same and, like you say, implemented strategies, or has it affected your day-to-day? What's the scoop on that?
I mean, certainly at the moment, if there is a lease event, then we are reviewing what that space requirement is. And we're sort of tracking, so we're probably sitting around, which I think is more or less a national average of about 35-40% occupancy. And it's the usual, people are coming in mostly Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think for us, it's recognising that we're not only serving a client that sits within the physical building we're in, we're actually serving a client that is, 50% of the time is actually working remotely and working at home. So it's recognising that, and certainly during lockdown, that very much changed. So again, thinking of projects, one of the other projects that we're now beginning to look at, and it's off the back of COVID and supporting people totally working up, is to go through digitalised, centralised post scanning, because in effect everything went to a central post point, it was scanned and then sent to people who were working at home. So it's those things which are beginning to change in terms of thinking about, well, where is our client, and how will we support, how will we that knowledge information transfer, because it's not now just face to face, it is very done from a sort of remote point of view.
So Shoosmiths is a law firm, for anyone that doesn't know. I didn't ask you guys about that because I just assumed you should have listened to Jacki's episode before, where we talk about what Shoosmiths do. But I went into the Peaky Binders reprographics room here in the Birmingham office, and you'd mentioned about this, and that they were coming in during COVID to get, because for anyone that's never worked in a law firm and can't quite picture what needs to happen here, there is an awful lot to sign in terms of documents, and paper must be printed, and ink signatures, wet signatures, whatever they call it.
And it is balance, and the courts are beginning to change. So they're changing, so it's more digitalised rather than it being physical paper and wet signature. But we're not there yet. So there is that transition that we're going through. And we find now with documents, is it a doc sign that you're doing, or is it a physical? So there are issues that we are having done some initial feasibility as to how we do centralised post and scanning. There are still issues in terms of, well, what do you do with the physical document? How do you get a wet signature, and so on? There are a lot of sort of challenges there that we've got to look at as to how we provide that service.
And that rests on your shoulders.
Our tip for this week is all about event management. You may know, if you have heard anything on this podcast or followed the Office Management Group for a while, that we run tens and tens of events every year, from small networking events and dinners to much larger networking events with upwards of 100 attendees. and then over to our office management awards, where we have around 200 people for a formal sit-down dinner, and the office management show, which gets about 300 people through the door throughout the day. It's so important when you are running an event to have an event planner set up. This shows everything in terms of what you need to do before, during, and after the event. If it's helpful as well, you might want to have a budget tracker in place. So you're setting out what the venue costs, what the cost for drinks are, the cost for catering, any decorations, staffing, games, entertainment, all these different things, flowers, etc., giveaways, goodies, and so on. Get all of that in there into your budget tracker in terms of what the quotes are and who you're going with, and then the final costs that have been agreed. Always add that 10% overage when you're doing things like this as well. So you've got that little bit of wriggle room just in case. Then start to draft your running order for the day or days of your event. What does that look like for setting up? What does it look like once doors are open or once guests attend? What time do you want food to be served, drinks to be served? How will the bar work? When are you going to register people and how? How are you closing down? And what's the requirement, I suppose, when you're closing down? Do you need to take rubbish with you, or will the venue get rid of it? And all these different questions that you need to ask and display on your running order. Maybe consider getting a contact sheet here as well. So all the different people that are involved in the event on the day, like photographers and things as well, and their phone numbers and email addresses, you and your team, the venue staff, and so on, so that everything is in one place, so that should people not arrive on time, you've got that there, or even set up perhaps a WhatsApp group for all the key people. Again, consider how you'll manage attendees, RSVPs, what platform you're going to use. We use Eventbrite, for example, but you could be using something like a simple Google form or Microsoft form to get the replies in. And what's the objective of your event? What will make it a success? So think about that from the start when you're doing this event. And even if it is just a casual work social, what is it exactly that the objectives are that you need to try and achieve here? Is it just team building and getting everybody together? Is it to have fun? And therefore making sure that you've got, the best quality food at the right price is going to be really important, that you've taken into account everybody's dietary requirements and drinks requirements, and everything just feels very cohesive so that it will run smoothly in order to achieve those objectives. So have a think, what will make that event a success? What makes events a success in general? And hopefully it will run just as smoothly as most of ours tend to.
How about for you, Jacki? What changed with your role, or what impact did hybrid working on post-pandemic have?
From an office management point of view, I would say knowing who everybody is. I used to pride myself on knowing every single face, what they're about, whether they were, and what type of personality they were. Some people just like to come into work and put their head down. Others like to have a chat. And it was knowing everybody and everybody knowing myself. Since hybrid has come in, I'm finding that a lot more difficult, because you might not know, you don't always get introduced to everybody. Especially like the new people as well. We're struggling, I think, with finding out. I think because I don't do the inductions as well. I think that's another thing that makes it more harder to get to know everybody. And luckily they know us, because on their induction they'll be, they're shown who we are and things like that. But I think it's just remembering people's faces and name, putting faces to names and things like that. That's been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, all our team are in all day, every day. So from a team point of view, we are still in the office fully. Occasionally I'll work from home, but more often than not, I'm here. I just prefer it, to be honest. I prefer being in the office. And because we've moved here recently, you're still bedding in, kind of, it's still lots to learn here and making sure things work properly. But it's nice to see people when people do come in. We've got the popular days. Mondays are becoming more popular now, and Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays are pretty busy days where lots of people are in, which is nice, because there's the buzz in the office as well disappears a little bit when it's quieter. Yeah. But people are starting to come.
I expect there'll be a lot of people listening who concur with what you said about getting to know people, because I've just been writing on the train up here some slides about culture that I'm delivering next week, just finished, and culture and the impact we have in office management, facilities management, workplace experience. And it's quite hard to garner a culture when you're such an influencing part of it in office management, because it does come down to the facilities. People don't want to work in somewhere that's dirty, that feels messy, because that impacts their, like, Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As someone who is so accessible, i.e. the office manager or your team in the building, in the premises, to not be able to have as much of an impact because you don't know everybody, you can't get to know the personalities and therefore necessarily deliver that service to your clients. It is a challenge, isn't it? And like you say, not doing all the inductions, or people not coming here on their first day because they'd rather work from home their first day. And you can't, there's so much out of our control.
Yeah.
I mean, we are certainly trying to drive that. So from an induction and first day, so just picking up on your point there, is that off the back of COVID, so much of it was done remotely that we're now driving it and saying, you've got to come into the office. There has to be that face-to-face contact.
Good.
And also one of the things that we sort of, I suppose, developed off the back of, although it's partly there in terms of COVID, is, for me as a function, we're spread across 13 offices, that potentially each office team can feel isolated because they are just working within their office. So within the structure, we make sure that, for example, the next level down where we've got the team leaders, is that they have their own community, their own group. So team leader in each office, that they, as a peer group, can then communicate with each other so that they're not just working in isolation. So they know they can talk to each other. I've got this problem, how did you overcome it? And so on. So that they, and also from a wider point, that they feel part of a much bigger function, that it's not just 3 or 4 of them in isolation working in an office, that they are actually part of, a much larger group. Plus there's that sort of wider support.
Sense of belonging, isn't it? I think, which is lacking for some office managers, where one office manager, no receptionist, no support. Everyone else is external and contracted in, and so it's important to have that internal network.
Yeah, you are right in terms of culture, and one of the whole sort of, I suppose, change that we're going through at the moment as to why should people come into the office. Culture is really up there at the top. It's that whole thing of, this is how we do it here, and then how do people learn if they're all in isolation working at home? That whole process of osmosis of learning, of actually being next to somebody, all of those things that are so critical for people to come into the office.
The younger generations don't seem to know what a desk phone looks like either, which just gobsmacks me. Yeah, because I was a secretary in my first ever job for an estate agent, and had the handover that I got and the training I got from other branch secretaries, because it was a fairly big group of branches. I would have never learned how to even have telephone etiquette if I didn't listen to conversations and understand the sector that I was in, i.e. real estate, selling houses, but also how to do this job and how to be more efficient. And there's so much you learn, like you say, from just sitting with someone and observing. And now we can't go too much further in without telling the listeners that we are in your beautiful newly fitted out offices, as we mentioned already, in the heart of Birmingham, but more specifically, we're fortunate enough to be using your amazing podcast room. Can you both tell us about the project, how you worked together and with others to achieve the results that you have here?
Shoosmiths office has a head of office. We're very fortunate here that we've got 2. One very much focused internally, one focused externally from a sort of commercial business point of view. And actually it was working initially very closely with them, but then going through a process of consultation with the whole office. So literally every cohort that we actually set up calls, whether it was the PA assistants right the way up through to the partners. Because again, to put it into context, in effect, we put the brief together for this during COVID, so sort of 2021. So again, nobody knew really what was coming out of the other end of COVID, whether everyone would still just work at home. Would anybody come back into the office? When they came into the office, why would they be coming into the office? So for us, it really was challenging the boundary of, and hours and hours were spent, but it was really, this is a real testament, the end result, the real testament to the input that we had of what works for people in the office they were in, what they would like to have. We have tried to meet as many requirements as possible to get that balance between, from a standard corporate point of view, but actually understanding what people need. So that was a real, and in effect from that, we were able to put the brief together. We did a design competition, so we went out to various design companies who then presented back to us. The firm who we actually appointed absolutely understood what we were looking for. This wasn't about bricks and mortar. This was about people, and it was about understanding how people work in different ways, different emotions, the whole sort of spectrum of sort of diversity, inclusivity. I'm going to say fortunate, but we had a member of staff who was in a wheelchair right the way through the whole design process. We consulted Janu. This is the space you're going to have to work within. What works for you, what doesn't work for you, whether it's counters that were lowered so that she'd be able to reach it. So that the first time she could actually make her own copy. Those sort of things which you tend not to recognise. The signage is in Braille for people who have issues with sight. So it is, to say, and I'll repeat it many times, it's about people, and it's about understanding who's in.
Massive challenge, because in the middle of that very unique time in our lives, in our generation, which may not happen and hadn't happened for generations before us, to be able to take on a project like this and almost have a crystal ball to figure out what the future workplace post-pandemic would need, without any data really as to what that was, and only leaning on what works and what doesn't in your existing office. So kudos for coming up with that. So Jacki, what about for you? How did you work with Simon, other than just being told what to do and getting on with it? What else did you do?
It was the other way around.
Good.
I was lucky enough to be involved from the very beginning, really. We saw a few places that had potential spaces for us. So we went around those, didn't we, together, and then along with Alex and Beth, our heads of office. I think we all found, as soon as we walked into here, that this was the place where we wanted to be. And then it was working with the designers every week, channeling emails backwards and forwards, going in the go-between, really, sometimes between the design team and Alex and Beth, because they're both lawyers. Their calendars are just full. It might be me saying, right, what do you think about this? Or there was like questions, or it might be the other way. They'd quite often think of things overnight, what they wanted, or so they would see me and they'd say, could you and speak to the designers, and so it'd be like that back and forth. So, and I'd always check with Simon to say, right, how should we approach it? And there's also the budget that we had to think of. So there's that managing the budget,
and also managing being able to say no in a nice way.
Yeah,
you can't have it.
Yeah,
we can't afford it. It's not realistic.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, only four floors here, because their sort of understanding of sort of space and everything was, this is how much we've got now, so this is how much we need when we relocate. And actually, the challenge here, and I think how successful this has been, is how we've been able to create something which is so flexible and so diverse in how we're able to use it, that really maximises the efficiency of what we've got, which is why we've been able to really get that quality finish.
We're going to have to share some photos, I think, aren't we?
Yes,
just so they have an appreciation of what we're talking about. So for the lessons now, because everything we do in life, especially when it comes to projects and project management, generally gives us lessons off the back of it. What have been the lessons learned off the back of this particular project, and what perhaps didn't go so well, versus then what are you proudest of? I mean, it sounds like Jacki was very much empowered through this and through the conversations I've had with her already, again, in last season, to come up with ideas, to be creative.
Absolutely. And totally part of the team from day one. So this wasn't a remote central team coming in and dictating what was going to happen. This really was totally collaborative.
But so lessons, what's come off the back of it for you?
I think one of the lessons which I always say is you're not going to please everybody all of the time. So whilst 99% of the people are really happy with it, there are some bits that we needed to change. And I think a lesson also is to not get offended There's no reason to be offended. This is an amazing space. If things need to be changed, that's absolutely fine. You have to live in the place. You have to live somewhere in it before you can realise how things work. I think just making sure that people are aware of what's going on, keeping people in the loop. I think with Shoosmiths, it's a firm that it's the only firm really that I've worked at where they are really transparent with what's going on and they want to hear what the staff want. Simon mentioned about the cohorts that we had. We very much wanted to include things that the staff would want. And it was important, I think, to make sure that because it was COVID during the time, people had got used to working at home. So it's thinking ahead, right, we're going to have to make it homely to going to have to make it enticing and welcoming for people to come back. So things like that.
Which I think we've achieved, having it around.
I mean, where we have, I'm going to say, I'm going to use the word struggle, it's not the right word, is because we didn't know what the answer was going to be to a certain extent, is that the last sort of probably 6 or 7 months, we started to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
So that we probably went too heavy on the expectation of social space and breakout space and sort of collaborative space, thinking that people would, on their own, if they've got an individual task where they could do it on their own, they would do that at home. But when they came into the office, it would be to work with their team, interact, socialise, collaborate. And to a certain extent, we probably didn't quite get that balance right. So, we're sort of making those modifications now. And to a certain extent, I still don't think we've actually got to the end of that journey. Not everybody knows exactly where that's going to finish.
Yeah.
And then the other hard bit was actually the budget and the cost of construction within the 2-year span of the project was hugely impacted by the way there was such a massive increase in terms of construction costs that we then had to manage very, very carefully. So, there was a lot of value engineering done to enable us to manage it within a budget that was set sort of 2 years prior, initially based on that anticipation of the inflation of cost of construction. But with war in Ukraine and oil prices going up, construction costs just went crazy.
Mm. Did you face delays as well as most did with materials and parts and bits for doors, dormers and all the rest of it because of Brexit, because of COVID, because of the war?
Yeah, there was an impact there.
Yeah. Managing.
And that's where, again, when you're looking at managing a project we had a lease break date and the office that we've come out of. I mean, literally, we moved in here the beginning of May, and that lease break was the end of May. And if you think that this project moved in here in May and it started August the year before, so you were looking at a sort of 8-9 months project, which initially was sort of 6 months. So again, you're having to manage that all the time.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Really tricky.
Having a month to move everything, all the stuff out of the old office, which we were talking about earlier, weren't we, with the how you close offices. That was quite a challenge. But I think one of the things actually that I would take from that is if you've got a good company that you've worked alongside that you can trust, then that's half battle. We brought we used a firm at my old company who did office moves with us. There was a couple of them that we used, but there was one that I introduced here after I'd been here a while. I said, look, these guys are really good, really reliable. So they've been working alongside us and done numerous office moves with us and other things throughout our offices as and when needed. Knowing that I had them there sorting things out was a big weight off my mind, really. And so it's having those contacts and getting recommendations.
Simon, given your extensive experience in this profession now, why do you think it is that office facilities management professionals are still so undervalued in general? And how can we help to shift both the education on what they do, what they're there for, how they support businesses, but also the appreciation for the role in the profession?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly recognise that, in that I think part of the issue is that we don't communicate enough as to what we do. I don't think our internal clients actually know what we do. They literally just think we do fill the jars with sugar, with not sugar with sweets. That's so they only relate to what they can see. They don't recognise that there are environmental audits going on, fire risk assessments going on, the whole health and safety side of it, the testing of all the air conditioning water systems to make sure we don't have Legionnaires. There are some real serious elements to what we do that keeps people safe. That they're not, don't get Legionnaires, they don't die as a consequence. It's those things that they don't recognise. They don't understand the technical level and knowledge, and sort of to a certain extent, the sort of the pressure and stress that is constantly there 24 hours. I constantly refer to our management team that during COVID, that it was my team that were having to physically come into the office every day, risking their lives. Everybody else was all nicely safe. And again, whenever that opportunity, I really drive that. And it's recognising that probably as a function, we are the lowest paid. And I think that needs to be adjusted as well. Actually recognise the profession, and there are the rewards for it, because it is, risk decisions that we're taking constantly all the time.
I teach a health and safety course, and a lot of people don't realise that health and safety is the only criminal law where having commercial premises and employees comes in. HR, yes, you can get food, but you're not really ever going to go to prison. So,
I always say that health and safety manager, she keeps me out of prison because I can go to prison for corporate manslaughter. So it's nobody else in the firm, as a consequence of that, can end up in prison. And there is no recognition of that really from a sort of salary structure point of view.
Exactly, because it does need knowledge, it does need experience, ideally qualifications.
If we get it wrong, if we're not checking that the life safety systems are working, and that fails, and there is a fire, and there's a fatality as a consequence of that. And that is just somebody going around checking.
Emergency lights or springing more
absolutely. So I think it is. I think the issue is most people don't understand what we do. They don't understand the gravity of what it is we do, and they don't understand the level of technical information and knowledge that we have to be able to perform the roles that we do. Plus, it's responsibility at cost.
Yeah.
So the property cost is, apart from people, it is the largest overhead cost. So you're dealing with millions of pounds, where you compare that with, the IC function, the risk and ethics function, the IS function. And I recently had to do a report against our budget going forward. And the COO said, I want some highlighted numbers, blah, blah, blah. Well, HR, their budget that was like just 30 seconds. It took me a whole weekend to break millions of our budget down to be able to show year on year where that comparison was.
It's not cheap, is it? Now in this environment where snacks, beers, whatever is on tap, and which wasn't certainly the
I missed that one.
Oh, good. But in my day on running offices, we were lucky if there were different types of milk and sugar in the fridge. And now completely different things. So the budgets and the procurement and the ability to save as well. I've saved my businesses $500,000 a year in some of my roles. So there is a huge amount of value and impact. So in your view, and Jacki, if you've got anything to share here as well, please do. But in your view, how do we shift that, or how are you working to shift that so that your team, other than saying, well, they all could have died because they put themselves at risk going in for COVID, and I'm just going to constantly remind you of that over the next 10 years. How do you try and shift that lack of knowledge, that lack of appreciation and the value, and try and push, I suppose, on the salary point as well, which I'm sure, again, a lot of listeners will be empathising with here and connecting to that particular statement that you made there, that it is one of the lower paid types. Back office generally always has been. But How do you work on that? What advice can you give to individuals maybe listening who are in these positions to try and raise their profiles?
The industry association is working hard on trying to get that recognition that we're not just somebody in a brown coat and a sweeping brush. It's moving that understanding that there is a massive level of technical knowledge and recognition of what we're doing, particularly around energy control, environments, carbon, all of those elements actually now sit under our responsibility. So it's not just a question of, keeping the air conditioning going, it's making sure that it's the most cost effective, but it's using green energy. I think the breadth of what we're now responsible for is growing and has grown. And I think that will help to really give more recognition to what we actually do. So we're, as a firm, we're signed up to the carbon science-based targets, which means we can't just offset, we actually have to do it. And that sits with us, that being able to actually deliver that. So again, a lot of the projects that we're involved in is looking at, well, how do we save energy? What can we do? Managing 80% of it sits within our supply chain. So it's actually managing our supply chain and educating them. And
put the pressure on them as well, right? To say, what are you doing and what your clients demanding of you. Jacki, what about for you? How do you, obviously you've got a really good relationship with Simon and you've got a direct line manager as well, haven't you? Yeah. But how do you, obviously they've been in the profession, they know it as well. Yeah. How do you support educating them on what's happening more on the ground and the people that you manage? How do you raise your profile internally?
Being quite transparent, I think, being here, being present.
Winning awards.
And I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say since being nominated for the award last year and winning, and that's brought a lot of opportunity, but it also does raise your profile. Absolutely. Doing this podcast will raise my profile. One of the girls in one of the buildings, she said, "Oh, I listened to your podcast the other day."
Amazing.
I thought it was just me listening to it.
Wow. Sorry, Simon.
There you go. Yeah.
But 10 minutes is changing.
But I think you, the way to help raise profiles is such as like nominating people for your awards that are coming up, because it does highlight it and it does get recognised. Like we have like team briefs every month here in this office and other offices, and if there's anybody that's been nominated for awards and things like that, it is recognised then. So it's about if you've got a colleague that you can nominate, do it, because and people notice in the office got the award and like by a little framed picture to say winner, and it raised my profile a lot. And I think just generally talking to people as well, just in general, if you're making a drink and things, talk about what you've been doing while you're making a drink, because that's the way that people are going to get to know it as well. Just talking face to face with people without, that 5 minutes waiting for the kettle to boil, or for the coffee machine to work. And they do see you doing things, but there's lots of other things. You might say, I've got a fire risk assessment coming on board. And then eventually people will realise how much you do.
And inductions is a good tool to use as well, to your point when you mentioned about those. I will say the awards that Jacki won is not our awards. It's to give Dan a shout out. It's the PA Forum West Midlands Award that he started Office Manager of the Year, I think, last year. And in those, so Jacki won that, and I was the judge, which is actually how we met. But Jacki is entering for our awards this year.
I am, yes.
We'll find out in the next month or so whether you're a finalist through that process. Now's one of my favourite times on the pod where you and Simon, will start with you, to share something from your Office Manager diary, a you won't believe it but moment, please.
Won't believe it moment. So, very fortunate. I, for a long time, worked with IBM, and whatever connections senior managers had within IBM is that going back a long time, is Covent Garden, the Opera House, was more or less totally flattened and rebuilt, and the Opera House was struggling and needed somebody to come in parachute in and manage the project of slowly decanting the different functions out of, so the orchestra, the ballet, and so on, out the opera house. And I was tapped on the shoulder and said, we'd like you to go, although you work for IBM, we want to take your skills, project management, and be dropped in. As part of that process, obviously I had access to ballets, operas, and so on. And sort of my manager at the time within IBM, I had a very close relationship with him. And he had a young daughter, and just in conversation was saying, oh, we'd love to be shown around the opera house and see a ballet being performed. So I arranged that, and they came, and I sort of got them through. And at the last minute, a colleague had said to me, do you understand what this ballet is? And
how old is she, did you say?
Yeah, and do you recognise that there is actually that they enact a rape scene? It's really not appropriate. So anyway, we ended up sort of going up to the fly tower and actually sort of behind the scenes, sort of watching the performance rather than sitting in the audience. We ended up doing behind, but it was like just one of those things where sort of my boss at IBM wanted to do this thing all laid on, and then at the last minute totally collapsed from a really embarrassing thing. This young daughter it was not appropriate for her to see.
Trying to do a nice thing.
Yeah, trying to do a nice thing. This was really quite embarrassing.
Jacki, you gave us one last time, but have you got any others to spill the tea on this episode?
So during one of the closures of the offices, we had to empty like under the desks and everything like that, because you do get physically involved in it as well. It's a very hands-on job. One thing I will say about office management is you've got to be prepared to do everything. Yeah. So we're just trying to think what we found. So we found a nice wooden box of port and cheese, which had been there for quite some time. I thought I was going to have to get what they call it, the help thing. Yeah. Found a suit with a pair of underpants in the pocket. So that was another thing. Shoes, ladies' shoes under a man's desk, because everybody had their own desks in those days. I thought, it's quite a I had quite a few oh my god moments with those things that you find under the desks.
Pedestal clear out. Jacki Morgan was some of my favourite ones. Yes. So you're both fairly senior when you think about entry level into office management. Like you say, you start receptionist or a PA role and you move in to take on facilities, whatever else it might be. Can you share some tips, or a tip each perhaps, for people looking to develop in the role and get to these more senior level positions that you're both at? I mean, you're director level now, Simon. So any tips to share for people who are aspirational?
Be prepared to get involved in everything, like we've just said. Get to know it from the grassroots, from reception or the admin side of things. Work your way up. Embrace all the knowledge that other people will give you. Ask the questions. Get involved in communities that can help you, like you meet like-minded people. There's lots of different areas to office management, whether that's health and safety, can progress to IT or something like that. Find the bit that you enjoy the most, and there will always be something that you can learn on that, and it can take you into lots of different areas.
It is being prepared to really get involved, really be prepared to do. I mean, I'm going to say I hate the phrase, but go above and beyond all the time. I mean, I was fortunate within IBM. I sort of came in to IBM from a secondment point of view, and every meeting I went, I'll do that. Eventually IBM said, we actually want you to work for us. And within 6 months, they said, we want you to go to Paris. We want you to, and a lot of that was, I'll do that. And there's loads of sort of professional level things that you can educate yourself and get to certain recognitions, but it really is being, and it almost applies to anything really. If you're just being prepared to help people, that's a real, just there to help people. And actually then people will register that, and they'll go, that person, they stepped forward and helped us with that.
What would you say so far in your professional careers has been the biggest hurdle for you to overcome?
My background is design. So I was dyslexic as a child, stuttered to the age of 15. But it's actually recognizing that different parts of the brain they do different things. And it is just taking the element that is your strongest point. So for me, initially, it was that hindrance, but ultimately I took that to my advantage. So for me, a lot of it has been around interpersonal skills. And actually it's that, face-to-face personal contact looking as a tip again in terms of how people actually develop, it is building those relationships. It comes down to people again. This may sound a strange thing. If you're a nice person, people like to work with you. That helps to go an awful long way. We spend most of our lives working. Want to do it with people that you can enjoy doing it.
And in this profession, all over the awards every year and the testimonials and nominations, the beating heart, the lifeblood, the heart and soul, the things we hear about office managers and facility managers in the profession. Jacki, what about you? What would be your hurdles?
When you've got a big project on, or if there's something that's on your mind at work, being able to switch off. When you go home at the end of the day, and it took me a long time to work out the different ways to be able to do that. And it's not a one size fits all for your brain to switch off. There's different techniques, whether that's talking to somebody in person or on the phone about what your worries are, or whether you just don't talk about it at all, having a relaxing bath, just being able to find ways to switch off, which in your normal day-to-day, sometimes there can be just some niggling little thing that will really annoy you, and it's really, in the grand scheme of things, it's a first world problem. But to you, in that day and in that moment, it can be irritating. Having that ability to say to myself, right, switch off now. At the end of the day, you finish work, you're at home, forget about it for now, tackle it in the morning. And then I always do find that generally the next morning you do feel better about it, or you've come up with some kind of solution. So I think it's that hurdle was, and it's taken me, years, and I'm still learning how to do that now. There's always different ways to relax. That's been the biggest hurdle, and switch off.
Yeah. And you've alluded to, Simon, the fact that this is a 24/7 job because you've got property to look after. Yeah. And if something goes on with that property, or people can't get in, or fire alerts or bomb threats or whatever else that may go on, leaks and so on, that they call on.
Yeah, that's right.
So my last question, what is next for you both? Are there any projects coming up or aspirations to achieve as a next step in your careers?
For myself, we're still quite new here. We are still bedding in. We've got lots of events and things going on here at Shoosmiths with lots of different clients, and it's bringing very exciting. It's bringing lots of different people here. So I think my next focus really is to make sure that I've got the team correct, and we've got the correct team working together to make sure that we are doing the job that we're here to do, delivering that 5-star service. And it sounds quite simple, but people management is quite possibly one of the most difficult parts of the role sometimes. I mean, not that anybody all of my team are fantastic, but it's making sure that people gel. They've got to be able to, move smoothly as a team as well as individuals, and getting that right can take time. So that's my focus.
Well, obviously, as you've alluded to, I've been doing this a long time. I think for me now is thinking about what is the next stage of life from that point of view. Yeah. What are those? When you sort of look after a family and spend most of your waking life working hard, it's actually then, what's the next stage?
I think it was on air actually, because I talked about the amount of time you've spent in this profession. So maybe that's where you got it from. But we did have, before we started recording, we had some jokes about what's next, Simon, and I briefed him on these questions. So, well, thank you so much both for joining me on Office Manager Diary. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Whoa, don't leave us just yet, listener. I want to share with you a quick reminder. If you don't know about this, then you absolutely need to have a look into it. And if you do know about them already, it is time to put yourself out there. The Office Management Awards are back for 2024 and we need your help. You can nominate anybody in your company globally for an office management award. And if you are the office manager or responsible for office management within your business, put yourself forward and enter for an award. There are 10 categories to choose from, ranging from Office Manager of the Year to International Office Manager of the Year, Hybrid Office Manager, so for those who are in perhaps an assistant and office management role or an HR and office management role. There's Culture Champion of the Year, Sustainability Champion, Project of the Year. There are loads to choose from and you can enter for up to 2 awards this year. If you're nominating, there's also the option to nominate your favourite service provider and or suppliers. And we really, really do need your help in saying thank you to the businesses that help you run your business. So now is your time. Go ahead, drop over to our website, www.theofficemanagementgroup.com/the-awards. That's theofficemanagementgroup.com/the-awards. Entries and nominations must be received by Sunday the 10th of March at midnight UK. Good luck.